everybody, I'm Shazia. I'm the social media strategist for Globe Content Studio, and I'm here to talk to you about the fun and exciting world of advertising. So, Ethan Zuckerman, that's probably not a name most people are familiar with, but he might be the most hated man in internet history. I know there's a lot of competition in that category these days. Hi, Elon. But he created the pop-up ad. Ugh. Sorry about it. He does feel really bad about that though, and once a long time ago, he wrote an essay to explain how that happened. He calls it the internet's original sin. See, he and other .com originators, when they were building this thing called the World Wide Web, they wanted to make sure it could always be open and accessible for everyone. Information wants to be free is their mantra. Well, to keep it free, you need money. You need some sort of funding model, and the one that they chose, no one's really said it better than he has. Senator, we run ads. I mean, that's not a crime, I think. It's definitely not a sin, but in order for this business model to work, you need an incentive for advertisers and investors, and the incentive they chose was data. We won't just show your ads to lots and lots of people, like that's easy. We'll be able to tell you more about those people. We invented this thing called a cookie. It's supposed to help improve user experience on our sites, but we'll be able to tell you, advertiser, more about those users with it. Like, where do they live? What are they buying? What do they want to buy? Okay, that's a really good incentive. Unfortunately, the Silicon Valley mindset of infinite growth, number go up, perpetual money generation capitalism meant they could never stop there. I mean, every 5 seconds, it feels like another competitor comes along offering more popularity, more users, more data about those users. So you have to keep upping the ante and to try to stay competitive, maybe partnering up with a third party to collect more data about your same users, or developing new technologies to track even more of their behaviors. And then that's how the flywheel of internet surveillance starts to turn. Continuously trying to prove everyone's data is the best data, that we have the best one. Building algorithms that generate more activity, more data points, more ad opportunities. It turned into a bit of an arms race. So I guess it was only a matter of time before everything kind of blew up. So there's been a bit of a vibe shift in our industry lately, wouldn't you say? Everyone's feeling kind of doomy. Everybody wants their privacy back online, and that's fair, but a lot of advertisers are feeling scared. It feels like if everyone goes hiding, are we still going to be able to do what we do? Is it over? I think to answer that, we need to look back really carefully at some of the main events that have happened over the past few years that got us to this place, and try to really analyze them to see what it means for our future. Now, buckle up. Some of this stuff might get a little technical. I tried to keep it pretty top line, but I think the best way to understand everything is to focus on 4 major software ad product updates that got us to where we are today. The first one is perhaps the most impressive weapon ever built in the data arms race. Facebook's Open Graph API version 1.0. Whew, it's really exciting. Clearly really pretty to look at. You're probably wondering what that is. It's Facebook's 2010 protocol that essentially turned their entire ecosystem, every account and activity, into this big, giant open map that anyone in the world could just access for free. Developers could plug in their own apps and their own websites and basically start this very mutually beneficial tit-for-tat exchange of information that would ultimately paint the most detailed picture of every single Facebook user. You could learn their likes, their dislikes, their birthday, their family tree. This was considered the holy grail of personal data. Now, I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard of API version whatever, but you probably heard of one of its most famous users. The consulting firm Cambridge Analytica was one of many that was given free, open, unfettered access to this API, and they used it to make an app that ended up harvesting the data of 87 million people without their consent or knowledge. Then politicians bought up all that sweet data to create hyper-micro-targeted ads that were really effective. They worked like a charm. A lot of people say they're the most effective political ads that were ever made, but then people found out about that. This was a watershed moment when I think we all really woke up to what bad actors could potentially do with our digital information, and it wasn't necessarily a good thing. This was the first time that the hashtag delete Facebook may have trended worldwide, but it was far from the last. This one event caused billion-dollar fines for the company, more leaks about how they were mishandling data, massive privacy laws that have now been passed all over the world, and dramatic shifts in users' behavior that now make it a lot more difficult for us to find and connect with our consumers. I think the second update I'm going to talk about happened so close in time to this one that I think it might have gotten a little overshadowed in the news cycle, but it's really just as important. So this is Mark. He's a social media marketing strategist. He's 58 and he lives in St. Louis. He's really, really experienced and generally never has trouble finding work, but at the moment, he is on the hunt for a new job. And he's been scouring LinkedIn and Indeed for new openings, and you can bet ad trackers are following all that activity. So when he heads back into Facebook, you might think, oh, he's probably gonna see some ads that are somewhat influenced by his work. He does see some ads for like marketing software that maybe he should buy, but what he doesn't see is all the jobs for social media that are being advertised, like these real ads, because these were exclusively targeted only to users under 40 years old. He would have loved to apply, but no matter how long he scrolled, he would have never seen them. He's just one example. Countless people have been prevented from seeing ads for things like jobs, housing, financial products due to their age, their gender, maybe their postal code, and a bunch of other demographic traits. Platforms like Facebook, but many others, have long given advertisers like me free rein to just go in and pick and choose these audiences, but at a certain point, that's not ad targeting, that's discrimination. So it actually led to major class action lawsuits against the company for violating people's civil rights. So Facebook had no choice. They began to remove those targeting parameters in a special categories ad update so that ads for things like jobs and real estate could no longer be targeted to or excluded from people just based on demographics. But you're probably thinking, okay, that could actually go a little bit further, couldn't it? I mean, what if they know that I have a personal health condition, or they know my sexual orientation, or my religion? If tech companies and brands know that stuff about you and can just decide to show you or not show you content based on that information, isn't that discrimination too? Probably. So that's why Facebook, now rebranded as Meta, continues to remove all sorts of parameters just like that. Those hyper-specific segments that we're so used to seeing in their back end of their ads manager are now being consolidated into much larger ones or just removed entirely. I know Meta gets the most heat for all this sort of stuff. They have also taken the most action, to be fair, but it's really only because they're the biggest player. But if you go into platforms like TikTok, LinkedIn, Snapchat, all of these offer pretty similar targeting parameters. There's just maybe not as much attention on them. And under the right circumstances, they'd probably all be liable. So I actually think this kind of targeting is maybe gonna eventually be too hot to handle legally, and it'll probably start to fade away. In fact, it already is. All right, the third horseman in our adpocalypse, sorry, I like puns, this pop-up. Okay, actually just curious, show of hands, how many people here are Apple users? Whoa, that's a lot. Artsy crowd, makes sense. How many people here are Android users? It's okay, you can raise your hands. I'm not gonna judge you for green bubbles. Okay, interesting. So for those of you green bubble people, you might not know this, but in 2021, Apple introduced a new update with a feature called App Tracking Transparency, ATT for short. The way it works is that everyone's phone, not just Apple users, has a unique serial number, an ID, and ad trackers use that to follow you around and figure out who you are whenever you log into new apps or websites. They tie it all to your ID number. But ATT allows Apple users to basically turn that serial number invisible so that trackers have no idea who you are. And it's super easy. You don't need any tech experience at all. You just tap it and never have to think about it again. But behind the scenes, all of those taps led to a lot of this. Advertisers were freaking out. They thought we just lost half of our audience like that. Meta, was especially going full SpongeBob panic mode. Why would that have happened? Because they're disproportionately impacted by a change like this. First of all, their whole business is very much built on being a mobile-heavy audience, but moreover than that, I think a thing a lot of people don't realize that it didn't become the world's most dominant ad platform by just collecting a bunch of data within their apps. Like, it's cute that they know you liked a cat video the other day, or your relationship status is it's complicated, or you started poking people last week because that's cool again or something. It's not that. It's their ability to track across platforms and devices that they don't even own. They have a massive third-party network of partners. They have pixels installed in pretty much everyone's website, your website, my website, and all this stuff is passing data back to them via things like your user ID, so that when you do log into Facebook or Instagram, that's how they seem to know so much about you, and it's almost like they were listening to you through your phone. I know that's the conspiracy theory, but unfortunately, the real tech is easier and cheaper, and it's not as exciting. Others aren't as good at it, but Facebook/Meta actually made the game. So I can actually show you a little bit of an example of what we observed in our Meta ads account that year that shows how dramatic this shift was. So here at GCS, we've typically seen that the majority of traffic that we receive from Meta ads to our sponsored content does tend to come from iOS users for sponsored content. It's not always. We do a lot of different kinds of ad campaigns, but we see it usually tends to skew more to that side. Right around April 2021, we started to see that dramatically shift. Pretty shocking. Now, we're actually one of the lucky ones. Our business model, we've never been overly reliant on iOS users to hit a lot of our particular KPIs and objectives. We're not even that reliant on Meta ads at this point. We're a major media company. We have a very rich marketing mix. But for small businesses, a lot of them up until 2021, this is all they had. So that kind of change could be really devastating. Oh yeah, just a little fun fact about me. Also, this all happened literally the second I started my brand new shiny job at the Globe and Mail and took over all these social media ad accounts. It was a really good look for me. Thanks for that, Tim Cook. Anyway, a little fun fact. All right, update number 4. And some people say this is like the big one. I think up until this point, I think we can all agree Meta seems to be coming off as enemy number 1 in the data privacy struggle. But, they're not alone. There's a duopoly, of course. So Google's starting to get some side eyes about the way they're collecting user data, too. And they see what's happening to Meta. They see the writing on the wall, the will of the people, the billion-dollar legal fines that could be coming at them. And they decide we should really get ahead of this. So in 2019, they announced that we will start to eliminate third-party cookie tracking in Chrome at some point. This year. Wait, no, 2 years from now. Actually, maybe 3? They keep pushing the can down the road, but it looks like this is the year that it's actually maybe gonna happen. I mean, they have to. Cookies are the villain, the original sin of the internet. Everyone else is starting to block these things and they kind of have to join in. You might be wondering though, wait, won't this hurt them? Probably not as much as you think. Yes, they are an ad-supported platform as well, but they'll still be able to track users within their own platforms and for their own products. And I don't know if you've noticed, but they kind of own the entire internet. They will, so things like Google ads, for example, will probably not be that badly impacted by this change. But for anyone planning to use literally anything else for their marketing, you might start to see things like ad personalization, attribution, and measurement start to fade away, at least for all the traffic you get through Chrome these days, which unfortunately is still most of the market. So, that's a lot of bad news. Is it over? Are we cooked? Should we pack it in? No! Don't be such bummers, you guys. All of the stuff I just talked about is very serious and requires very much a nuanced approach, but here's why I don't think any of that actually means the end of digital advertising. In fact, I think this is a great pivot moment where we can now push to build better, more effective, and more ethical ad tech than we've ever had. And I think that for 4 reasons. Reason number 1, okay, this is a spicy take, but I actually think hyper-targeting is bad for business. Don't throw things at me. I think our obsession with it actually stems from an old industry practice that has maybe turned into a bit of a bad habit over time, the marketing persona. I think we've all had to build or follow a marketing persona at some point. There are these very detailed fictional biographies we put together of who we think our ideal customer is. We sometimes give them really cute names like Shelly the shoe lover, Bob the builder, I don't know. The idea is to visualize the buyer and really get into their psychology so you know who would buy what you're selling. In theory, it's a good practice, but in actual practice, this thing has become reductive, overly narrow, based on a lot of outdated stereotypes and personal biases that don't really take into account the real complexity of humans or their environment. Case in point, the Stanley Tumbler. I'm actually curious, how many people here have a Stanley Tumbler? Okay, there's a few. I'm starting to feel very uncool because I don't have one, because these things are blowing up. If you're not familiar, this is a water bottle that for the past 100+ years has been pretty thoroughly marketed to the rugged outdoorsman type. Why are they now selling out everywhere? It's not because there's suddenly a bunch of rugged outdoorsmen, I promise. It's because there was a few women a few years ago who randomly stumbled on some, maybe at their local store, and were like, oh, these things are really cool. I like the handle. They're sturdy. They fit into my car's cup holder perfectly. And it just so happened that those few women were online influencers with a very popular shopping blog and a massive Instagram following. and they just put one word out to their fans, and it was over. Now this product is being sold out left, right, and center. It's being bought, though, by a persona that the company never thought to look for. I think that's just one of a million examples I could pull up of why hyper-targeting can blind you from finding a lot of your real customers when you're so focused on a very small set. The other thing I think is that I think third-party cookies were not actually that good. I know, sorry, another hot take. Still don't throw things at me. Internet users are routinely clearing their cache, sharing their devices with friends and family, using VPNs, ad blocks, going into incognito mode when they need to look up something weird they don't want their friends to know about. I'm not saying I've ever done it, but I heard it happens. And a lot of studies confirm these things the data sets are not that solid. For example, the typical match accuracy rate between two parties, their sites cookie data is at best 40 to 60%. That's kind of the best you can hope for. About a third of users have now have ad blockers installed. About 40% of web traffic is estimated to come from users who already blocked third-party cookies. And one really interesting study I found said that in the most ideal circumstances, ads that used cookie tracking were able to increase the likelihood of someone making a purchase by, wait for it, 2.7%. Wow, exciting. I think the reality is we've been clinging to a technology that sounded good on paper, but maybe is less so in practice. The other thing is cookies are old. They're like from 30 years ago. They were made in 1994. There's probably people in this room who weren't even alive in 1994. I think it's safe to say technology has advanced just a smidge since then. One big thing that has changed since then is that we've all developed the power and knowledge to collect our own first-party data. Even very small brands and publishers are learning to collect consent-based user information and collaborating with a lot more direct partnerships to create relevant contextual ads that are still getting results. I don't want to throw the big platforms under the bus totally. They are doing their part. Google is trying to put together what it's calling a privacy sandbox framework. Social companies seem to have a different idea of like maybe more direct API connections. That's the last time I'm going to talk about APIs, I promise. It's a very heated debate. It's super technical and hard to follow. But I think the through line through all of these arguments is that it should be possible to collect aggregated, anonymized data, and that could be a good replacement. We can instead target our messaging towards cohorted groups that exhibit similar types of behavior or interest instead of following the same person all over the web. The other thing all these companies seem to agree on is let's have more artificial intelligence. Yay, we made it to the AI portion of the segment. I know you were waiting for it. So obviously, algorithms and machine learning have been a big part of advertising for ages now, but the investment that's been happening the past 6 to 12 months, I would say, has been mind-blowing. For example, remember this bummer of a chart I showed you about showing how we were starting to not have as many iOS users appear in the traffic from our Meta ads accounts in 2021? I got kind of curious. I was like, I wonder what that chart looks like today. Are they just completely gone? Here's what that same chart looks like in 2023. If anything, the angle has completely switched. It's stabilized, but it's even going up. How did that happen? I thought these guys were gone. Part of that might have been some adjustments and improvements that we've made on our side, but largely it's because Meta has rebuilt its entire ad model architecture with AI, making it more efficient, predictive, and adaptive. It needs far less granular personal data now to get things right, and even less manual input from us as advertisers. This is the future of advertising. Algorithms are just going to get better and better at finding the right people automatically, and I know that maybe sounds a bit scary. It's giving a little AI going to take my job somewhat? No, I don't think so. I think ultimately this change is going to be a net good because it's going to free us up from having to do all those fussy, frustrating, more fiddly things we had to do with optimizing and creating our ad campaigns, so we can focus on the last most important reason why ad targeting is not going away. And I'm very sorry, but it's going to be the least revolutionary thing you've heard all day. Content is king. I know. I didn't want to land on such an old saying, but you know what? Sometimes old sayings persist because they're fundamentally true. Actually, you know what? There's a bit of a twist on this I've been hearing a lot more from experts I follow in my industry, is that your content is the targeting. Your ads are the targeting, your creative, your message, how original, personalized, and human that is now the biggest factor in determining what gets seen or who sees it. I don't want to be like overly pie-eyed about this. It's not as easy as if you build it, they will come. Algorithms and SEO are moving these goalposts of what is good content, and sometimes they're moving in way the wrong direction. We've seen a lot of AI-generated stuff that's not so great lately, but those shadowy formulas were always intended to surface the highest quality content for users. At this point, I think it's just a matter of getting things right, and I think we as an industry can really lobby these companies with our ideas, maybe our dollars, on helping them get on the right track. So I know I threw out a lot of information at you guys, but I think the ultimate takeaway I want to leave you guys with is this. I know this subject is a little controversial, but sometimes in the talk about data privacy, advertisers get made out to be the bad guy. I don't think we have to be, though. I think as long as we can embrace technological innovation, build data sets that are our own and with our own customers' blessing, open our mind about who our customers are, and just focus on making really, really good stuff for them, we can all win. Advertisers and privacy advocates don't have to be enemies. We can work together. I think ultimately, information does want to be free, and we should try to help keep it that way. Thank you.